Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. I am the West African correspondent, Edward Amara. Welcome to this all important message on Focus on Liberia is a kind of news forum where we give you regular updates on events that happens on the continent. Because we believe in accountability, we believe that the continents need to be abreast on things that happen, especially our colleagues, brothers and sisters who are far away on the continent or above from the continent who do not actually know some of the major events that are actually taking place on the continent. So with this at hand, we use this particular opportunity to ensure that we inform, entertain, and also adequately educate our wider listeners across the group to know which events are actually happening, which are important, and why should Africa as a nation, as I always consider it to be, adequately address some of these issues that affect our daily being, that affect what our production on the continent. And for far too long, Africa has been maybe a deeply divided nation where people, because of diverse reasons, have actually created some issues that have never been maybe auguring downward for the development of the continent. So, welcome to this all important forum. Feel free to participate, and we also encourage our wider listeners to click on the sharing button and help us to disseminate the news in different fora. Thank you. This is Edward Amara, Focus on Liberia, West African correspondent, currently in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Let's listen. Sudan authorities call on retired army soldiers to fight. It is absolutely amazing. Maybe it's a surprise, but not a disappointment. Or I can say it's a disappointment, but definitely not a surprise, because the clashes in Sudan is now taken from one step to another. Dagalo and Abuam signed a peace accord in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, to ensure that to ensure that they had a kind of peace accord that will bring the almost 2 months war to an end. Unfortunately, it has resulted into sporadic clashes, and civilians have been killed, people have been raped, and maybe the entire South Sudan actually is also definitely worried because of the war in faction into northern Sudan. Now, the Sudanese army led by Al Buham is now calling upon those in the countries, especially the retired soldiers, to take up arms and ammunition against instituted state or authorities, especially for them to join the army. This is a clear indication that the army is also failing, and there is a clear indication that maybe Dagalo and his men are taking huge amount of uh, they are making huge amount of progress on the Sudanese army base, and this could really result into another dire consequences. The UN and other places are actually calling upon Dagalo and Abuham to ensure that they have a kind of peace accord that can save the Sudanese citizen. But unfortunately, none of them is actually following the protocol, and this has now resulted into the killing, raping, and damage of the Sudanese economy. So now they are calling all retired army to ensure that they take up an ammunition against those who he described as enemies of the state. And that situation have never been following good on the continent. So it's a sad event. Maybe we should be very careful, and 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 we should also be maybe very analytical enough and see how to follow up with those particular issues, because Sudan is situated in a very critical condition, and if situation like this continue to happen on the continent, maybe the entire East Africa may go into another full-blown crisis, and the UN and other bodies are actually uh, calling upon maybe the international bodies to ensure that they have a kind of peace accord that will save the country from self-destruction. But since then, nobody is actually following the rules, and a lot of clashes have happened. Peace accord have been broken, and nobody will definitely continue maybe to be adhering to people who do not believe into most of their wordings. Their wordings have never been peaceful, they have never been loyal, and they are not even patriotic to the very state where they are managed. So the United States, Saudi Arabia, and even the AU are calling upon the so-called Sudanese army to ensure that they deviate from their warring tendency and accept peace, especially for the civilians who are staying in that part of the country. Because things continue to be, nothing is actually following, and we may end up to see a deeply divided Africa, and also people who are in one or two way interested in the division of Sudan will end up to exploit the situation because they are directly benefiting. So it's a fearful situation, and the world at large is actually watching, and we are praying and hoping that the situation should not escalate beyond this particular tension that it is undergoing. Then we can also take another story in Nigeria. We are seeing the Supreme Court in Nigeria through a landmark election case in the country. Kashima Shita, who is actually elected alongside Shiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is the vice president elect, actually had a petition against the PDP candidate in one of the Ondo state. Unfortunately, uh, the election commissioner in Nigeria decided to throw out the case. Reason being, in the first place, it was somebody from the opposition who petitioned his candidacy, and in actual fact, Shatima actually attempted to maybe call upon the Sudanese people, the Nigerians, to ensure that they vote for him as a senatorial governor. But when he was called by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to run as a running mate, he decided to withdraw his candidacy and continue running as the vice president. And upon his election, they are now claiming that the man in question actually went in for two elected or electable positions, which are constitutionally wrong. But based on the court findings, he never actually materialized his position as a kind of senatorial position. Rather, what he did, he actually contested the election only as a VP. So that case have actually been thrown out of court, and the court has been asked the country Supreme Court and its VP come come Saturday or come Monday the 29th. Then in the same case, we are seeing nurses have actually gone on strike in in Nigeria because nurses and the dental association, they are claiming that they need salary increment, and they want the government abnormal development, and maybe they are claiming that even the government of Muhammadu Buhari, who is definitely leaving, has never lived up to expectation. And in so doing, Muhammadu Buhari should leave a country in that complaint state. And they are saying they will be very happy to ensure that the coming government, led by Shiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, inherit that particular political crisis. And if he cannot fix those issues, they are not going to work with him. And they are saying that part of the constitutional mandate given to him is that he will be willing to fix up most of the challenges that the present government is living. They are even claiming that the past government was never serious about salary increment and even improvement into their wages, demand, and other things. Those who are supposed to retire should retire, but with absolute benefit. That is why they are saying. And today they are on strike, and it was just after another strike, which part of the Medical and Dental Association in some part of last week called up their strike because the government made their own demand, and this could be another second phase. Who knows? Before Monday, another strike may definitely come on. Then we also go into Ghana. In Ghana, the judiciary system is definitely on strike because they are also claiming the one salary increment, and at the same time, they want the government should to address their retirement issues and the manner of which allowances are being paid to court officers. They are saying it is definitely not encouraging. So if the government of Ghana cannot adequately address their issues, those congested court cases would never be addressed. And people who are actually, especially the inmate who are suffering from one crime to another, and some of them have never been tried, they are saying it will take a long time before ever the court cases are being opened. As long as the government of Ghana, led by Nana Akufo-Addo, cannot address their issues, then it is possible that the situation may escalate and they are not willing to take compromise. The only compromise they want to take is seeing that their salary, wages, and retirement issues have been adequately addressed and on time, and even backlog wages, which they were deprived of, they're also claiming that they need to be paid. Then we also go into Rwanda. Rwanda is in East Africa. A genocide may be orchestrated. Who did it in 1994 after the Hutus and Tutsis? We saw a lot of Tutsis who lost their life because of the killing of a Hutu president. It was largely claimed. Now, the fellow was living in South Africa under a very different name. But when the United States put $5 million upon his head and asked for anybody who will give an information leading to his arrest will be given that. So that bumper amount was levied on the price and he was arrested in some part of South Africa, living under a disguised name. So he has been brought to court and the government of Rwanda is actually seeking for him to be extradited to Rwanda to ensure that he faces trials. But he has actually denied and claimed that he is innocent, and the court system in South Africa and that of Rwanda will negotiate to see how the suspect will be extradited in time so that he can face his trials. And if he's been exonerated in court, then he can live as a free man. It is widely claimed that he was living apart from his family. His family were actually living in some part of Cape Town, and he was serving as a laborer in one of the parts. The suspect in question was the Inspector General of Police by then Rwanda in 1994. That saying is the chief orchestrator of the plan. They were also going to Libya. The government, the national government of Libya, is actually taking a strike against bandit, those they describe as bandit, and those human trafficking network into the country. They are claiming that they want to destroy their network and to ensure that nobody is being maybe trafficked from Libya to overseas. It's a kind of joint strike, but some analysts and other people are saying that Libya actually does not have any air flight or helicopter to come to make such strike. Maybe they are using drone, or maybe they are being helped by the government of Erdogan, who is in Turkey. However, Turkey is yet to comment, but it is all known that Turkey has a selfish commercial interest into Libya. And since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, Libya has never been at peace, and Turkey has taken keen interest into it. Coming to Mozambique, the government of Mozambique has proposed a pay cut into top officers, permanent secretaries, ministers, and deputy ministers, including MPs. They want to address maybe the high cost of living and ensure that there is salary unification into the country. They are claiming that some people with the same qualification working in different government parastatals are receiving money different from their colleagues. The best way they can do to ensure that maybe they have a kind of unified system of working we can benefit is to ensure that they have a salary modification. And some part of 2014, there was also another salary modification carried out into the country. So those whose salary are modified are never going to be affected. But the key area has been named. Permanent secretaries, ministers, deputy ministers, and MP salaries are going to be modified so that it can meet the current challenge of the country's economy. Then we come into Africa. We are talking about AU, Organization of Africa Unity. The president or the chairperson, Musa Muhammad Saki, is actually calling upon African leaders not to allow the United States, Russia, and China to use this as a praying ground. They want to use their geopolitical mentality to ensure that they carefully divide the continent. Both the government of the United States, Russia, and China are on the continent seeking for allies. And of you, we have seen the foreign minister of Ukraine also on the continent seeking for political allies. They are now calling Africa to be united, like the mistake that happened in the struggle for and partition of Africa in 1900 should never be repeated. They are saying Africa should stand on the very neutral ground, and this time around, Africa should not be allowed to be divided apart because of selfish and scrupulous mentality of the Europeans. Then finally, the iconic tree in Sierra Leone preserved in the museum. We all know this tree is a cotton tree that actually is situated very close to maybe the state house, as we call in Israel, in the mansion, are very close to our country. The judiciary, we have the Supreme Court system, and other places are being stationed over there. And very close to a very popular area they call Pademaro. You can just leave from that area to go to the Pademaro prison. That Coffee tree is actually it's a monument for Sierra Leone. It has been there for centuries ago. When we had the free black slave that came into Sierra Leone in 1847, it was under that cotton tree that they prayed, and they also went to the freedom steps. And that cotton tree have been there for quite a long time. Yeah, hundreds of years, generation upon generation have seen that tree. Because of the global warming, climatic change, the cotton tree suddenly fell. And sometimes ago, interestingly, there was a pastor who prophesied that that tree will fall in less than 2 weeks' time. And indeed, his prophecy came to pass. There are mixed feeling about the tree. Some people are claiming that the tree, because of maybe African traditional mentality, they are saying Buddhism or witchcraft will be performed over there. And some people are even saying that the tree is a reminder of our slavery connection. However, the president said part of the tree will be kept into our museum as a means of memory, and the tree is connected to our present, to our past, and to our future. And if that tree can be kept into that museum, it keeps reminding Sierra Leone for a long time how that tree was important. And each time you see the tree, you remember our day of slavery, the free slaves that first, the black Poles that first arrived into Sierra Leone, where they pray and where they went to the freedom steps. So those things are going to be carefully maintained. However, religious mentality may interpret the situation differently. And those who believe in another mentality may tell you this. But the fact is that the tree was an iconic for Sierra Leone. It was spectacularly situated, and it has a very good reputation in the country. Anybody who knows Sierra Leone, who knows about the country's history, will tell you about the connection of the tree. But religious, maybe societal mentality have their own interpretation of the tree. But the fact that the cotton tree will be remembered for years to come. Thank you. It's been me, Amara, focus on Liberia, West African correspondent, coming to you with the latest